Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's Ask a Professional Bites and Insights. We are pleased to have with us our friends from Loblaw to bring to you Packaged for Success, which is a program to help you along your journey for retail to be retail ready. I have with us today Christine from Loblaw, who will introduce herself and her coworker. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Stephanie. So thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Insights and Bites Package for Success session today. I'm your host, Christine Scara, and I'm the Senior Director of Specialty Foods Procurement at Loblaw. So I would say that most of the product that comes in through these sessions comes to my team first, and excited to be working with the BBPA today. So today is a precursor to the Ready to Scale event, which will be held in the spring of 2025. And details on Ready to Scale will be made through social media channels and the BBPA newsletter in the months to come. We're holding today's event to take you through the administrative part of working through Loblaw as a supplier, which we understand can be very overwhelming. So to help you with that, with your journey, we do have our Loblaw resident expert, Sherilyn Chisholm. She is the director of the Small Supplier Program at Loblaw, and she will walk us through how to get listed as a vendor once merchandising has agreed to list your product. So before we start, I just want to go through a few things. We'll try to reserve some time at the end for Q&A if you have any questions. And if you can't get, if we can't get to your question by the end of the session, please feel free to write your question in the chat so that we can respond following the event. There will be a short survey following the session to understand if you found this today's event helpful, and we also always want to know how we can improve for the future. So with that being said, I'll send it over to Sherilyn.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and meeting all of you virtually, at least for now. As Christine said, I am the director of the Small Supplier Program, which was recently launched here at Loblaw. We launched January 1st, so we're just over 8 months in and learning a lot and getting some really great feedback with regard to how it is helping our small supplier community. So with that said, as Christine mentioned, what we're hoping to do today is just walk you through a document that we've prepared that outlines 9 things that, we are hopeful we're going to bring to light and that you should be thinking about if you are ready to start, thinking about doing business with a retailer like ourselves. So here we go, right? And the first part of that is, indeed, congratulations. There's a journey and a story, and that is probably the most exciting part of my job is getting to hear small supplier stories. But as you progress, you get to the part in the journey where as an entrepreneur, you're ready to take that potential step to start working with a retailer. And so here are the 9 key areas that are really important for you to become familiar with. The first one, are you technically ready to manage information? Because most retailers like ourselves are going to have a form of a platform. It's usually called a supplier portal, and it serves as the hub for where you do almost all of the business and interactions with us as an organization. So, there's multiple aspects. There's listings, there's changes, there's your business profile, and it usually is all housed in some form of a vendor portal. So, being familiar with that and having, the right tools to be able to manage a platform like that is probably the first and foremost thing that you should think about. Secondarily, there's usually contractual obligations. So most organizations will have some form of a contract. At Loblaw, we call it a VBA, which stands for Vendor Buying Agreement. And it is a requirement in order to take that step to become a supplier. It's part of the onboarding process. It is a document that can be very daunting. We understand that, we appreciate that. And teams like myself are here, to help you understand it. Sometimes you have questions, but unfortunately, it is absolutely a requirement in order to continue the process. and move on to the next steps. Moving on to number 3, do you have or have you thought about product liability insurance? If we can just scroll down a little bit on the document there. This is an important part of, doing business on any level, because it is to protect you, it is to protect the customers that are potentially going to be buying the product, and it's to protect the retailer or the business that you are working with. And you know what? Things come up in this area. I mean, we all try to be safe. We all follow the regulations that are necessary. But, if a customer is impacted by something to do with your product, there's loss or damages to property caused by your product, or any unforeseeable circumstances that we haven't even thought of. This is a really important piece. And so as a first step, if you haven't already, just simply reach out to your insurance provider, understand what the options are. Usually the amounts that most retailers are looking for is somewhere between a $5 million and a $10 million certificate. So there you go. That's step 3. Number 4, GS1 Canada. I'm sure many of you have already heard about this. This is the Canadian body that governs UPCs or GTINs. And that is the little code that your product would have that actually allows it to scan through the till. And coming out of the gates and starting, in the right and best regard, registering with GS1 Canada is really important. It signifies your commitment to ensuring your business is going to be successful, and it protects you because those UPCs, as I said, are regulated by this organization. There was a time when GS1 was a little bit more of a scary place for suppliers to kind of reach out to, but they have really come a long way. They are very geared and focused on small suppliers, and they have actually created some small supplier packages. So if you are reaching out to them, make sure you're asking those questions to the representative you're talking to so that they can help you with that. And you know what? Is anybody seeing on the screen? Are you still seeing the document on the screen? Okay. So I will just carry on then. So that's GS1. We've noted some, email information and some contact information, even a phone number, so that you can reach to them and better understand what
your voice is crackling right now.
They're all about and how they can help. Move to all right. If we've taken care of all of those administrative things, and we are indeed ready to potentially start getting product into stores, what is the delivery method in which one is called DSD or direct store distribution, as when you as the supplier physically take product to the back door of the store. And then the second one is warehouse. And that is when we set you up within our system and you would be delivered to a warehouse, and then that warehouse would in turn take the product through our distribution network. So, to other DCs potentially, depending on how big area you're going to distribute to, and of course into the stores and onto the shelves for our customers. I'll take a moment here. This is re-pitching your product. If you know that you have capabilities and you have the volume breadth to be able to manage product. Oh, my voice is not clear. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I can move a little closer. Is that better? Is that better? Sorry. So, if you understand what you are capable of doing, it really helps with the bit. If you can come in and say, this is my product and I am ready to distribute it nationally across the country, that is really helpful to the decision makers on the other side of the table wanting to understand. If you have a product and it's ready to distribute, within a province or even within an area, it's all good as long as you kind of know what you're ready for. The next step is banking information, and this sounds so logical.
Sorry,
but
Sherry Lynn.
it's a really important step. Yeah.
Sorry, your voice, it's still crackling. I think from when you're at the GSM1 section, your voice is coming across unclear. I don't know if it's connection or what it is, but we're having a hard time hearing you.
I'm not sure why you turn. You're having a hard time hearing me. Okay, give me 1 second. I'll just pause. I'm gonna mute, and I will mute, and we'll see if it's better on.
Or perhaps sometimes when your bandwidth is low, if you turn off your camera, the audio will be clearer.
Okay. Okay, that too. I will turn off my camera, which is down here. Okay, let me stop the video and see if that's helpful. Is that helping? Is it
Yeah,
clear?
it sounds better right now. So if you don't mind going back to the GS1 section, I think that would be
Sure.
great.
No problem. Okay, so GS1 is GS1 Canada is the governing body for all UPCs or GTINs that are within Canada. So they govern them. They protect your product because that UPC that they would assign to you and you ultimately are purchasing will only ever be used for your product. So reaching out to them and having a conversation, understanding what their options are. One of the things I mentioned was that they have really created a focus for our small supplier community. And so they've created packages that you can purchase that are much better focused on a small supplier and what their needs are. And certainly, they've taken into account cost. So if you haven't already, understanding what that organization is all about, and there's some email contact information there for you, as well as a phone number so that you can reach out to them. Is that good? Okay. And then we'll move on to the next section, which, sorry about that. Next section I started talking about was delivery opportunities. How to get your products listed in our stores is the next part. GST is something that you have to be aware of based on your specific product. So products are categorized in most retail stores. There is store, which is all of the products within the middle of the store. There's the fresh component, there's the bakery component, and then there's the frozen and the seafood components. So depending on where your product will live, the GST and tax requirements are different. So you really have to know your product and what is required from it from a GST perspective. All right, how do you get your products listed in our stores? So there is a process, and what, it is a long process. I often share with when I'm talking to them about Loblaw, people like yourself and our small supplier community are often like a sea-doo, right? They can ebb, they can flow, they can move really quickly. You can make decisions really quickly. Loblaw is more like the Queen Mary or a very, very big cruise ship, and it takes a long time for it to turn. There's lots of processes, so you need to be prepared to be patient. So, items into our stores are managed within the categories like I've talked about. And we have category directors, Christine alluded to her team, and they are responsible for making decisions as to what products actually go on the shelves. And so that is step one. There has to be a home for your products, and there has to be a desire by our category leads for them to be on our shelves. And once that happens, then the next part of the process is the fun part, really. So what I would suggest is making sure you understand the competitive landscape of your product. What makes your product stand out? Is it unique? Is it better for you? Is it sustainable? Is it expensive, or is it inexpensive? All of those things are really important for you to be able to share when you are presenting. And you know what? I want you to note, if you become a Loblaw small supplier, all new items within our store, part of the tenets of our program are that they are on shelf for a minimum of 6 months, hopefully longer. And there is also our golden design rules, which is based on our initiative to really understand and adhere to, our initiatives from a sustainability lens. So what are the next steps for you as a potential Loblaw supplier? Number one, be confident you are ready to deliver the requirements that we've talked about today. Prepare a presentation that showcases your product very clearly. Tell us your story. What are the attributes of your product, like we talked about a moment ago? Include pictures and a base cost if you can. It's always helpful for us to understand, what this product costs me $5 to make. And then the teams will understand that there's a logistics component that has to be added to that. Include pictures, make sure we can see it. And, the packaging is a big component of that. Ensure the cost to Loblaw is going to cover your production, packaging, and of course, a profit for yourself. Distribution costs, as I mentioned, will be added, and most people that you're going to be talking to in the initial stages will understand that. It's something that you'll negotiate as you decide how many stores are you going to be listed in, are you going to go national, all of those components. And so, as I said, outline your distribution capabilities. That's really important. And then we have the support team. We're here to help introduce your products to the right people and get feedback for you, and understand if there is interest and a potential home. And then based on that, we understand what the next steps will be. So I thank you for letting me walk you through that. I'm sorry if it was a little bit crackly, but hopefully you got the gist. And we're always here to answer questions and help you along the way with your journey. Thank you very much. Stephanie, over to you.
I think at this time, we'll see if there's any questions, any initial questions, before we carry on.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mona. I see your hand raised.
Yes, I'm asking this question on behalf of a youth who has a product. Now, can that person initially come to you and get guidance, or should this person go to some small business program to ask questions?
Are you asking specifically? Well, I think that we are going to have our event in the spring. And so with your community, I think that it would be helpful for that to be the forum of which you would present your products, because then we have a base to start with.
Awesome, thanks.
You're welcome.
So
Abel, I see your hand up too.
Sorry, before we answer Abel's question, for context, some of you might be new to the program. Ready to Scale is a program that we've been doing in partnership with Loblaw Canada for 4 years now. What it is, it's an opportunity for you to showcase your product directly to category directors at Loblaw. And if there's you will get immediate feedback. And if there's an interest in your product, they will work with you to go through all the various steps, make sure you've done everything you're supposed to do to get you on the shelves. This program is a precursor to that, as Sherry-Lynn and Christine have alluded to make sure you have an understanding of what the administrative process is prior to participating in Ready to Scale. It does make the process a lot quicker if you come in ready. We will have another program. Right now it's slated for approximately February, where we will meet an entrepreneur who's gone through the program to help share their insights as well. And Ready to Scale will be in the spring of 2025. What would be required to apply to Ready to Scale is you'd have to complete an application and also do a video where you're pitching your product to Loblaw. And out of that, we will select the top candidates to pitch live. So that's context. Abel, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much for the context. I think when you said people are new here, I think you're referring to me. But yeah, I just wanted, because you're talking about, going direct to the shelves and the guarantees of like 6 months and all. I was wondering, because, with like grocery and like, I guess, retail psychology, is it assured like you get a middle aisle, top aisle of the shelf? Is there like a specific section you're going to, I guess that they're going to like focus, okay, we have new suppliers, so we want them showcased first versus people just going to like what they know and what they're familiar with and things like that.
That's a great question. You know what, Christine, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So what I would say, Abel, is it's up to the category director's discretion where they're going to place your product on the shelf. Oftentimes, there's usually a flow to the planograms, and they can't kind of break a block up or whatever their reasoning is, but there's no guarantee of where you're going to be placed. What I would say is that if you have more than one product, it probably helps your case a little more to create a little brand on the shelf, so easier to detect on the shelf. But in terms of placement, there's no guarantees. Like usually that comes out maybe 4 to 6 weeks before the planogram drops, because there's so much work that goes into the analysis of, where, placement and pricing and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's no guarantee where it's going to, short answer is there's no guarantee where it's going to be placed.
And you know what, Abel, maybe I'll just add to Christine's comment a little bit. Like a planogram is the process of which category literally designs where everything goes on the shelf so that the stores know where to put it. And we try to make that very consistent. And based on the category, planograms can be at different times of the year. And some categories have several, and some categories might only have one over the course of a year. So all of that has to be taken into account with regards to the decision making of what is going to go on the shelf, where and when.
Sherilyn, I've heard you refer to the term category quite frequently. For the benefit of our audience, can you please just explain to them like what that means?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So Loblaw is, there's a number of teams internally that have to work together in order to get a product from your manufacturing facility onto the shelf. Category are our merchandising leads. So within the business, they are the individuals tasked with understanding what our customers' needs and demands are, having the due diligence in their breadth of knowledge to understand, what products are going to drive volume, what products, are unique and should really be available to our customers. And so that is the category team that we are referring to. They are the ones at head office that determine literally what goes on the shelf, the merchandising specialists. With them are also procurement teams, which you would work with administratively to help go through the process that we've just kind of tried to outline for you, get onboarded as a vendor, and get your articles actually listed. That would be the procurement teams that you would work with, who partner with the category teams to bring everything to life. Does that give a little bit better clarity?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions? I have a couple of my own I'd like to ask, but I thought I would put it out to the audience before I ask any questions. Okay. We whipped through that checklist relatively quickly. From your experience, how long does it take a business owner to kind of complete all of those tasks prior to being ready to approach you with their products?
You know what I would say is that is usually the very initial conversations. Like when I have small suppliers asking me, how do I do this? I literally share that document with them and walk them through that. So if you have the background work done before you're actually presenting your product, if there is indeed interest, the process can move fairly quickly from that point forward. But it's making sure your banking information is done, making sure you have your UPCs ready to go, understanding, as I stressed, what are your distribution capabilities? How much can you produce in a day or a week in order for the teams to understand, how many stores can they actually put it in? Knowing those things and coming to the table with that really makes the process much quicker. Then if there's interest, the next part is really just formalizing all of those things. So in terms of a timeline, that's a little bit harder to nail. It's not a black and white answer. It depends on many, many things. But if you're ready to go and there's interest, I would say, you probably will get a lot of process established and moving forward within a couple of months once you're ready to go.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. In our experience with some of our entrepreneurs, they've done ready to scale. They weren't quite ready. And it was quite a lengthy process between, the event and when their products were put on the shelf. So what I understand from this conversation is if they do all of that work beforehand, it could reduce that timeline after the event. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Without question. And, we call that the pre-qualification process, right? All of those things, if they're ticked, then you are ready to go. And the process will be much more efficient and probably much less painful than what a lot of people have experienced in the past.
So if I can just interject there as well, because it's a several pronged process. So the first thing is to get listed as a vendor, which is where Sherry Lynn's team and kind of, you know, she onboards you, goes through the vendor onboarding. That could take a week to 2 weeks to get onboarded as a vendor and get a vendor number. Then there are several meetings that happen. You'll first meet with the procurement team, you know, understanding, you know, you'll put a deck together to understand, you know, why your product is unique, what's so special about it, you know, costing, tell us about yourselves and your story. And we will take that and we will send that off and we'll meet with the category teams to say, okay, we just sourced this new vendor. We think this product is great. This is why. And we'll have those conversations. If they're interested, the next step is to bring the vendor, procurement, and the category teams together into a meeting and you pitch the category teams again directly. If they're on board, and Sherry Lynn alluded to this, or not alluded, she mentioned this earlier, we have to time, we mentioned planograms. There's sometimes one planogram release a year, which is when new items can come into and onto our shelves. Sometimes they happen twice a year. So if you're off cycle, it could literally take you 11 months to get on the shelf. So it's never going to move as quickly as you want it to move, just to set, you know, expectations. But we will, you know, if it's a product that everybody is really, you know, I would say very excited to have, we will be on top of it to see if there's any exceptions that we can get to kind of go off cycle to get these products onto the shelves off cycle. So the vendor onboarding is one hurdle. And then the next hurdle is how to get your product onto the shelves and how quickly we can get that done.
Thank you so much. Mona, go ahead.
I have two very quick questions. One, does the product have to be made in Canada or can it be, let's say, made in the Caribbean? And the other question would be, what information can I take to my contacts, small business contacts at in Brampton to refer them to you? But can I take a material? Can you tell me what to a site to go to so I can scan something and share with them? What's the process? Thank you so much.
So I can answer your first question. Yes, you can. We can definitely have product listed that are manufactured in Jamaica, for instance. For sure, we have that currently from all over the world. And then your second question, I'm not sure I'm clear on. If you can just maybe rephrase it. Really.
I find this program very interesting, and I know of some small businesses in Brampton. I meet them on the community sites, well, WhatsApp, and I would like to be able to share some things with them. Is there a place I can go for a flyer or something that I can take and I can put it into the chat and say, could they reach me back? And then I reach you, the person who they'll talk with. That's that process I'd like to find out. Thanks.
So I'll just jump in quickly, Christine, before you respond to that. Mona, this recording will be available on the BBPA's YouTube channel. So that is the first place to go as a resource. We will continue to have programs to help business owners prepare for the Ready to Scale. So you can either reach out directly to us at the BBPA at info@bbpa.org. And also check our Instagram page. We will be sharing quick takeaways after this that will highlight the key points that they should be aware of. And I believe you're always free to reach out to the team at Loblaw.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We do have a question in the chat about, it's asking about the percentage of sales that Loblaw takes. And I think that will probably be more around the pricing structure, Christine. I don't know if you or Sherry Lynn want to address that.
So percentages, so what I would say is, there's, Sherry Lynn mentioned this while she's going over the document is, we need to understand what your cost is of your product. And then there are, if you're going through the warehouse, there's definitely some DC rates, distribution center rates that are applied to your product that you would have to pay as a service that we are distributing your product through our warehousing and our supply chain network. So there are fees. It all depends. There's not a standard fee. A lot depends on the cube of your product, the type of your product. Like there's so many things that weigh into it. So I can't tell you what those rates are because every item is different. But then once you give us that cost and you embed obviously your DC costs into your costs, that's what we pay you, and then we just price them the way we see fit based on other like items we see in the industry.
So just for clarity, I'm going to reiterate what I heard, and that is the entrepreneur, the business owner, is selling the product to Loblaw at a certain cost. That cost should factor in all of their costs to get the product to you, plus their markup. Whatever their profit margin should be included in that cost. So if I'm selling you a bag of chips for $5, that is what I'm getting from Loblaw. If Loblaw decides to sell that bag of chips for $8, the difference is Loblaw's profit.
Correct.
There's no additional negotiation.
Correct.
Okay, great. Camille, does that answer your question? Okay, while we're waiting for either a yes or no in the chat or for Camille to unmute, are there any other questions? This is a phenomenal opportunity for you to be able to speak directly with some of the decision makers, so to speak, over at Loblaw to get clarity. So,
Sherilyn, currently, how many small suppliers do we have that are part of the program?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So let me just take a step back to make sure that there's some context to this. So when we decided to launch the program, a lot of work was done for the January 1st timeline of when the program went live. And so we took our entire base of suppliers and vetted them to understand who actually met the criteria of the program. And at that time in January, there was just under 900. And now we are at 963. So since January, we have actually enrolled just over 75 new suppliers into the program.
wow, that's great. We have another question in the chat. What happens if your product is not doing well on the shelves?
So, okay. So every category trades differently. And one category, let's say we'll just use salty snacks. I would say the minimum threshold, dollar threshold is very high because of the velocity it sells versus toothbrushes, for instance, right? So each category has their own sales threshold. However, if you are not meeting like the category threshold sales, you will likely be discontinued. And that means the product is removed off the shelf and, you're no longer in the planogram. What I'm hoping would happen is there would be a conversation prior to that happening between the category teams and the vendor. To understand, is there anything else they can do to kind of, move the sales forward and kind of drive some velocity that way. But that is, the product does get discontinued.
Thank you so much. Nettie, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I have heard some horror stories, so this is why I sort of kind of seek clarification of product being returned to the small business at their cost. I have actually seen product from some of my competitors in a clearance bin for $1, which is horrible for your brand. I don't know what happened there. Me personally, I'd rather have them dump it than put it in that, because that's your brand, especially when you're selling at, maybe $10 to $12 a bottle, and all of a sudden your product is in a clearance bin for $1. So this is what spurred my question, as to what really happens, because things happen, and not every product is going to be successful, but it's good to know ahead of time what the action what action will be taken by Loblaw in case something like that happens.
So I think, again, every category manages things differently. I think the typical way, Nettie, is unfortunately what you're saying. There's limited space. So if there's a lot of product in the distribution center and this item has been discontinued, and we have to have $0, like zero quantity in our distribution center and at stores by a certain date, what does happen is items do get marked down to clear it out and move it out of the stores, because there's no space for it. And that's why you often would see that, Nettie. But that's a very good question. And I'm not sure, Sherry Lynn, if that's part of the onboarding piece so that vendors understand, or if that could be a consideration moving forward, like how, the discontinued process.
Yeah, no, I think the way I would answer that is to say, part of the whole onboarding process is becoming educated. And as Christine said, you're going to be introduced to your category leads. They know their category. They're going to discuss with you and build some form of a strategy with you to try to launch the product, number one. And obviously, everyone's intent and wish is that the product does well. If it doesn't, then everybody has to pivot. And so I would suggest there's going to be conversations about that, right? You would be made aware the product isn't moving. And then, is there something we can do about it? Is there, then you can sometimes contribute to, promo activity or certain things. So your category team will work with you to try to better the situation. But to Christine's point, if it's not moving and the customers just aren't buying it, then something ultimately would have to be agreed to in order to move the product, as Christine said. It's a process, right? That I would like to be able to say with confidence shouldn't happen just overnight, right? There's going to be a process before a product is in a bin for $1.
Okay.
I hope that helps, Nettie.
Sorry?
I said, I hope that helps you better understand, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's important that as you go through the motions, you're building relationships and having those conversations with your category leads and your procurement leads and all of those things once those introductions are made.
Yeah. Another question. Sorry, I didn't mean to hog the time. So at what point would a company be allowed to do tastings at a Loblaw store? What does that look like?
Do you want to take that one, Christine? That's
Yeah.
not black and white either.
Yeah, so sampling at stores is quite, first of all, it's very expensive. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because what happens is it's not you bringing the product to the store. They actually each store pulls the product from the distribution center. You'll be charged for that product, and then you pay for the person who's sampling and the kiosk and all the rest of it. So what I would suggest first is what I suggest with all our small suppliers is there's a kitchen in our office, and our office is quite large. I'm not sure if anyone's been there. Office is quite large, and we call it the eat together area. And I think there's opportunity to there's 3,000 people in our office. So there's an opportunity to sample your product and they're all consumers. So it's a great, I would say, sample size of customers to get your product in their hands. And then the other thing I would suggest is, if a category decides to move forward with your product, then we do a taste testing at the office. With us, we do them all the time. So we'd have category folks there, procurement folks, and then we invite a couple people throughout the building just to get their opinion on the product. So, and that's another way you can pitch and show everybody, tell them about your story and and the rest of it. So I'm not sure I would go into the demo realm yet, like initially. At stores like that is, you have to have DC distribution. And I would say you'd have to have a fairly good distribution in terms of where you are in the stores.
Mhm.
So I would kind of start out smaller and then go into, if you really scale up your distribution of your product, then I would do the taste testing in the stores.
Okay. So now I know where my samples went.
Sorry?
Now I know where my samples went in the test kitchen.
Oh,
No, I didn't ask to send some, and I did, and then when I followed up, they couldn't find them, which was kind of interesting. So I had to send some more.
okay.
You know what? Sometimes there's many changes within the building. It is something that those of us that are here, have to try to, keep track of. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes things like that happen, but hopefully not very often.
Okay.
We do
Sure.
have another question in the chat from Fatumata. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. They're asking, is there a limit to the quantity? So I'm assuming the quantity of items that is ordered from the business owner. Fatumata, if you'd like to come and unmute your mic and clarify your question, that would be great. Or you can offer more details in the chat. Or Christine or Sherilyn, if you tried it, if you'd like to give it a shot with the details we have, that would be great as well.
I mean,
So, yeah,
go
in
ahead.
terms of order quantity, if you're talking about minimum order quantity that Loblaw can order from you, you set that. So if it doesn't make sense to ship one case to 10 stores financially for you, then you shouldn't set your minimum order quantity or MOQ to one case. Some people put a dollar amount of minimum $500 order or a minimum 5-case order. So that is what you set, I believe, during the onboarding process.
Correct.
But in terms of Loblaw's ordering quantity, like if they order according to demand. So if you would know if your product is doing well because you would get several orders and POs placed, and you would probably see them fairly regularly. And the expectation is that you're filling those orders in full to ship and arrive in our DCs or at stores in full. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. We kind of took that two ways. So.
Yeah, and you know what, Christina, I'd probably say, like, this kind of marries back into what we were saying earlier. Like, you really have to understand how much you can produce and all of those things. So when you're having those having the initial conversations to understand if there's a home for your product, that's part of the conversation very early on. And then to Christine's point, when you are actually onboarded, that is all formalized and finalized as you're literally going through the process to get a supplier number, right? To Christine's point, you're going to say, you know what, I need you to at least order a pallet making it up. If that's where you're at and that's what it works, then that is what would be put into the system. And then the category leads are going to manage that because they will probably know the nature of their category, right? So if it's making it up, if it's candy, they're going to know, generally speaking, how much of a demand there is for certain chocolate bars or certain jubes or certain whatever. And so they're going to have those conversations with you because they'll understand what the expected demand will be. Does that help a little bit more?
Yes, it seems as though between the two responses, you've covered their questions. So thank you both for that. We have pretty much reached the end of our program. If there's any burning questions, I'll invite you to ask them now, and then we will go over our upcoming programs and then let you go to enjoy your afternoon. Are there any last questions? Okay, Sherry Lynn, Christine, we cannot thank you enough for the time that you've spent with us this afternoon. It has been a very insightful session. I just realized my camera was not on, so I apologize for that. I believe that this session has been very helpful, and we look forward to seeing, our business owners come to Ready to Scale more prepared than they've been in the past. So we really appreciate your time and energy, as well as the partnership that the BBPA has with Loblaw.